Call the meeting to order. Turn the volume.
That conducts city council meetings. We encourage everyone to attend and participate in city council meetings. This is part of how democracy works at the local level, listening to the perspectives of subject matter experts, city residents, and other community members helps our elected leaders make more informed decisions. Before we start the meeting, let's review some of council's rules of order. These rules help us make sure our meetings are orderly and efficient, while protecting the ability of everyone to have an opportunity to speak. Please be respectful of the person speaking and hold your own comments until it is your turn to speak. Presenters are invited by the council to provide information during the meeting to the council. These are informational presentations only, and nothing will be voted on at the time of the presentation. Presenters are not time limited. There are 2 times when all other visitors will be able to speak to council. The first is during the visitor section of the agenda, and the second is during any public hearing regarding an agenda item. During the visitor section, anyone may speak to council about any topic, whereas the public hearings regarding specific agenda items allow you to make comments for council to consider before they make a decision on that topic. Whether you wish to speak during any public hearing or the visitor section, the following rules of order will apply. 1. Only one person should speak at a time. Be respectful of the person speaking and wait to speak until it is your turn. 2. Anyone speaking must do so from the podium and speak into the microphone. 3. You must first state your name and provide your address in writing to the city clerk before beginning your comments. 4. All speakers will be given 5 minutes to make their comments to the council. The mayor or council may have additional questions for speakers after this 5-minute period. 5. All comments should be addressed to the mayor and council. 6. If you have questions about existing city processes, programs, or policies, or if you need assistance from staff on any issue, please contact City Hall during normal business hours and we'll be happy to assist you or answer any questions you may have at that time. The public hearing is designed to provide the public an opportunity to provide testimony and information to the mayor and council regarding the decisions they may be considering. Keep in mind this meeting will be recorded and live streamed with video and audio. Therefore, all comments relevant to this meeting must be spoken into a microphone, otherwise video viewers will not be able to hear you. In the case of a closed session or technical difficulties, some meetings or portions of meetings may not actually be recorded or streamed. The use of cell phones during council meetings is discouraged, so please silence all devices now. Thank you for watching, and thank you for engaging with the City of Nixa. The meeting will begin shortly.
Baylog.
Here.
Sean Lucas.
Here.
Jared Giddens.
Here.
Aaron Peterson.
Here.
Darlene Graham.
Here.
Matt Ogden.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will start off tonight with a service award. We don't have it on the agenda, but we're just going to do it anyway. BJ Sarton, 20 years with the police department. There he is.
I was just asking Mr. Lyles if that was going to be the case tonight because it wasn't on the agenda. I panicked for a moment.
Toss you under the bus, Chief.
Yeah, so BJ, 20 years. What can we say about BJ? Well, when he started here, he started as an animal control officer, and he walked into our police department, and I thought, what's this high school kid doing in our PD? He's a very young man. But as we quickly found out, as BJ worked through his career at the police department, we saw that he had a really good work ethic and that he was a quick learner. And very quickly, he became a person you could count on. He was always willing to help anybody in the police department or outside the police department, and he's still that way today. As he continued his career, many times we would approach him and we'd say, "Hey, have you ever thought about being a police officer?" To which he would say, "No, that's not for me. That's not what I want to do. I don't want to do that job." And so we were satisfied with that. But as he continued to grow through his career there, we found out that he was the kind of person that every supervisor would want to have. He's self-motivated, he's detail-oriented, he's extremely loyal to this organization, not only to the city of Nixa, but the police department as well. And he can be trusted with just about anything that you give him as far as an assignment. He represents our police department externally in a way that makes sure that every single person who comes in contact with him knows that we have a quality organization here. He's got excellent relationships with vendors, for example, and when he goes to conferences, he always comes back with new information and additional people that he can set us up with, and those relationships have paid dividends for us extremely well. Currently, he is a supervisor, and he handles all the equipment, uniforms, and vehicle fleet management for our police department, which is not an easy task. It's a tremendous amount of work. He's a valuable member of our staff, and actually I hope one day to get the opportunity to say nice things about him when he retires from the city of Nixa. So we're lucky to have him. Thank you.
Yeah, I think anytime you ask Chief about a project, he says, "Yeah, BJ's working on that. He's gonna get that. He's gonna have that done." So. All right, we will move on to our proclamations. First proclamation tonight is for the Ronald McDonald House. Whereas Springfield's 2 Ronald McDonald House programs have provided a home away from home and an invaluable source of hope and comfort for families of seriously ill and injured children who must travel far from home for medical treatment. And whereas the 2 Ronald McDonald houses located in Springfield, Missouri allow their guests to maintain close contact with their seriously ill children by providing a secure and supportive environment at no required cost. And whereas the Ronald McDonald House near Cox South and the house at Mercy Kids have served the needs of 470 Christian County families, 114 of which are residents of Nixa, Missouri. And whereas on Tuesday, January 24th, 2023, 69 McDonald's restaurants and various other locations will begin showing their support by asking customers to share their heart by adopting a $1, $5, and $20 to Ronald McDonald House Charities of the Ozarks through the Share a Heart campaign. Whereas the following generous contributors have provided sponsorship funding and underwritten the cost of the Share a Heart campaign: McDonald's of the Ozarks, Great Southern Bank, Mid-Am Metal Forming, Color Graphic Printing, and KY3 Television. And whereas McDonald's of Nixa is a participant in the Share a Heart campaign, which will continue through February 28th, 2023. Now, therefore, I, Brian Steele, Mayor for the City of Nixa, do hereby proclaim February 13th through February 19th, 2023 as Ronald McDonald House Week in the City of Nixa. A very good program. All right, we'll move on to our next proclamation. Whereas by partnering with more than 40 leading conservation organizations, Wonders of Wildlife National Museum and Aquarium, WOW, is becoming one of the most valuable and respected conservation and education centers in the world. And whereas through partnerships with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Turtles Fly 2, WOW has provided critical care for 30 loggerhead sea turtles before releasing them back into the wild. And whereas WOW opened its doors and waters to the third group of loggerhead sea turtles facing life-threatening conditions, and whereas 10 cold-stunned turtles arrived January 2nd to WOW, where they were met with an expert animal care team and transported to the aquarium Sea Turtle Center. And whereas loggerhead sea turtles are cold-blooded reptiles that depend on their surroundings to maintain body temperature, a dramatic temperature change causes them to suffer from a form of hypothermia called cold stunning. Cold stunning is fatal if the turtles are not rescued. And whereas due to their size, loggerheads are harder to place, and WOW is one of the few facilities that has enough space to care for them, WOW's life sciences and veterinary teams immediately began their work by developing care and treatment plans that are customized for each turtle. And whereas to thank the community for its support of Wonders of Wildlife and its conservation initiative, each of the turtles have been named after local cities and towns. One of the turtles is named Nixa. Now, therefore, I, Brian Steele, Mayor for the City of Nixa, do hereby commend the Wonders of Wildlife for all their conservation efforts and wish Nixa and all their turtle friends a speedy recovery. I think Mr. Russell has been working on this campaign.
Well, I'd like to explain why we just celebrated a turtle with Wonders of Wildlife, if that's okay. Where's the clicker? Oh, there it is. Let's see. Did you get that PDF I sent you guys? Anyway, so they came to us. Oh, Liz, where'd you go? Come on. Come on. So they came to us, and they've done this in various communities around the Ozarks, and we thought it would be a great opportunity to kind of utilize our Nixa Arts Council to do something fun with it. And we got a few of us together, and we've been going around town. As soon as we get some pictures up here, I think Drew should have that PDF in just a second. We've actually, the very first location we had, we actually partnered with the Nixa Parks Department on this as well. And Rebecca had it over there at the pool. It was a lot of fun. And then since, Tiffany's done a lot of things with it at various events, including the Atos Grand Opening. Liz had it out at Rosedale Farms, at the Rosedale Ranch this weekend. And
Going to Seven Hills next.
it's going to, well, actually, it's going to stay with the city of Nixa next.
Oh, it is?
Yes, so why don't you go give that to Cindy so she can give it to the mayor. And we can put Nixa Born up there with our mayor, and we encourage you guys to have a little fun for a few days, and then we'll take it to Seven Hills. Does that sound good? So we'll get a hold of Sarah Bader and have her come over and grab it at some point. But hopefully, Drew, I sent the email this afternoon. Because that's my whole chamber presentation too.
Oh,
No pressure.
may want to find that, Drew.
Well, anyway, so let's go ahead and get a picture taken, and I'll add the pictures to our presentation. Does that sound good?
Sounds
On
good.
my presentation. All right, come on. All right. Liz, you can hold the proclamation. Oh, no, you hold the turtle. Turtle, turtle, turtle. Yeah, have a case with it. Just a fun thing in Nixa we're doing. Something kind of fun. Wonders of Wildlife was supposed to be here, and they weren't able to make it at the last minute. Kind of give us an update on how Nixa Born was doing, but we'll try to get something out pretty quick. And it's kind of a neat program. And unfortunately, we don't get to see the turtles, but they do have other sea turtles up there, and it's just a lot of fun. This is one of the things that we're doing. So you can actually win 2 tickets to Wonders of Wildlife by doing a coloring contest. And I think what we're going to do is we had originally set the date to extend or expire the 17th of this month, but I think we're going to extend it all the way through Nixpo so that we can also have coloring sheets there for the kiddos. And so the kiddos can do it there. And then our goal is to get a bunch of them and then enter them into the contest. There she is. Hi. I thought you were somebody else. Sorry, Charity. Enter them into a contest to win these 2 tickets. So that will extend that out to be a little bit fun. And then, of course, these are some of the posts that we were talking about. Get this turned on. Okay. Are we working, Drew? Okay, next slide. This is some of Nixa Arts Council doing something, well, that's Katie when she did Over the Park, so that's fun. And then the ATO's Performing Arts Center, some more fun posts. So we encourage you to make sure that you're tagging Wonders of Wildlife and maybe the Nixa Arts Council when you guys post it to your social media. I'd love to see it maybe on patrol one day. I think we talked about a bucket truck possibly, so we can go to the next one, Drew. And then, of course, here's some additional ones. We have had some coloring artists, or actually artists, enter the contest, so we're excited about that. Okay, very good. And of course, they're not here tonight. So that is our proclamation, Mayor, for thank you so much for honoring our Nixa born. So very good. And I think I'm next.
All right, we will leave Mr. Bourne up here on the dais, and he can watch the rest of the meeting for us. So we'll move on to our presentation sections.
Very good.
The Chamber of Commerce.
Hey,
Mr.
it just
Chris
happens to
Russell.
be me. Well, look, there it is, right there. It happens to be the next slide. So, yep, it's time for give you a little update. Now, you're not going to get the whole show tonight. I normally would give you because we are presenting, obviously, the vision speech for the Nixa Chamber this coming Friday night at the Nixies, and I understand we have 12 people coming from the school or from the city, so that's exciting. I'll just give you an overview. This is one of the reports that I like to run every year, and this kind of compares our assessed value of our commercial and residential properties compared to Ozark. This is something I do share with Jimmy and Cindy, and we like this data because it tells us that we still have the continued growth. And as you look at Nixa School District and you look at the commercial for 2022, it went from 85 million to 87 million. Probably thanks to Cox Hospital. There's probably a big chunk of that, and the Cox would be on this year's assessed value. And then, of course, residential jumped from 398 to 414. Compared to just inside the city limits, you can see that 57 to 58 million dollar assessed value increase in addition to the residential 267 to 280. And then when we look at how that compares to Ozark, you can see, and I've got another little comparison chart here. So when we look at how that compares to Ozark School District, and the reason they base these on school districts because it is how schools get funded, right, is real estate property tax. So you can see that when we compare, we're still outpacing Ozark, except for commercial, but when you look at combined in the city, and you look in the city limits, we are 338 million assessed value, and Ozark is 295. And of course, the difference is we're 43 million. Now, they do have us in commercial. Now, what's interesting about that is that if you look in the school district, the gap is not as far as it is between the city limits and the city limits of Ozark. And we keep hearing, how additionally economic development can impact us and how we're trying to figure out infrastructure, sewage expansion, those types of things. That's going to be one of the ways in the future that we can continue to increase our income is through additional property values, and meaning that additional loads, we all know the story. We get those, it's more retail sales tax. Yes, it's more property tax for the fire district and for the school district, but we get the retail sales tax from that. So I'm really proud if we had the expansion. I think the RDE expansion into the northern part of our area, that will help us continue to hopefully one day extend them into the city limits, so that's a very good move. Those kind of programs like that are what we need to continue to look at. But I'm really proud. We're still outpacing Ozark in total assessed value, so we're still growing. We're growing at a fairly good rate, and we'll see how this looks next year. I love that report. Okay, well, we got this coming up, guys. A little concern that we have this year, we have not yet secured a premier sponsor. This is very crucial to the success of this event. It cost about $50,000 just to turn the lights on. Now, we obviously have revenue coming in from other sponsorships, so we're not going to have it, but it's going to make it just a little bit tighter. So if you know of a business or organization that would be interested in maybe partnering with the city on this, or our chamber on this, that would be awesome. I also know that you guys have allocated monies in the past, so we're going to need to talk about that. I think it was in the 2023 budget, and between this and the Sky High Fireworks celebration, and that way we can make sure we have those two great community events for our Nixa area. So that's coming up. Also, if you have not had a tour of this lately, Rich loves giving tours of this. Give him a call up and go walk through it. Guys, we are lucky and fortunate with what is being developed right here in our community. When you walk through it now, you begin to see, because he's got a lot more walls up and studs and those types of things, you begin to really get the picture. And you're like, oh man, this is going to be so cool with the outdoor seating and the AstroTurf and the stage, and then of course the eateries inside and the way they're going to set it up and the bar and the stuff that he's been building behind the scenes. So this little $3.5–4 million project coming into Nixa is really going to impact things, I think, in a great way. The road expansion is already causing properties to start moving on Highway 14, so that's exciting. The two little houses that are next to the 14 Mill Market have since been sold. I'm not sure the future of them. They're not habitable, so they'll eventually have to come down. And we've had some other infrastructure is starting to come down further down the road. So hopefully, as MoDOT and we, the city, invest in that expansion, that's going to help us with our downtown revitalization, which we have some of those groups here tonight as well. So just a little bit behind the scenes, 556 members. We are a 501c6 nonprofit. As we see on Facebook, sometimes people want to know how much taxes are costing us to build, to remodel 902 West Mount Vernon down here. Well, you guys know that we're not tax-based. And yes, you do give us some help through economic development occasionally, but that is used in different areas. And then in addition to that, to help us with our sucker days and with our fireworks show. We do have a full-time staff of 3, and plus we have a part-timer. Darlene comes over and does a few oddball things. She's made a really cute Valentine's box for us tomorrow. So that's going to be fun. And we operate on about a $450,000 annual budget. And when I say we rock, that's not Nixa, well, that is Nixa Chamber, but Nixa Chamber is much bigger than me. It's much bigger than Ashley and Kim and Darlene. It's our board of directors. It's our great members. It's our ambassador programs. It's the volunteers that show up at these events. It's everybody. I am so proud of the continued growth of our Nixa Chamber, and it's because of our great community. It has nothing to do. Well, we have a staff that has to operate and make the thing happen, but I mean, it's because we have great people that are out there supporting us, and I just want to say thank you to all those that do. A little update on 902, and I'm about to wrap up here. We had a major setback. We had paint and drywall and what the contractor said, ceiling tile, which, by the way, it's a subcontractor. We're using Extreme Built, and they've done a fantastic job, but sometimes you get a bad subcontractor. And we had to redo all the ceiling tile inside. We had to redo almost a lot of the paint and redo the drywall. It wasn't in a position that we felt comfortable presenting to our community. It was just did not look good. It set us back quite a bit, meaning that we're painting today. They painted today. And we're still getting delayed getting in. It's also increasing, well, it's decreasing the amount of money that we have for the fun stuff. So we're going to be getting creative on that very, very soon, and hopefully coming back with maybe some ideas on how tourism dollars can be used to support this. But it's been a little bit of a setback, and trust me, it's been over a year now that I've been working on this project. We actually closed on it at Meridian Title. Jared was there, and a few other people that are in the room today, on the Nixies date last year. When we had the Nixies was the closing date. So we've been working on this project for quite some time, and it's starting to wear on me a little bit, but we're gonna get it done. And when it does, it's going to be absolutely amazing. So, going to be fun. We'll continue to do all the other fun things that we do this year. We've got, of course, the Sky High Fireworks celebration coming up. Sucker Mania is back. I knew Sean Lucas would love that, so we're going to bring him back some wrestling. And, of course, Nixpo is just right around the corner. We're excited about getting Nixpo going. And, of course, you know, we have the Experience Nixa app with over 7,000 downloads, and it's growing, and it gets used a lot, especially during our major events. So we'll continue to bring all these wonderful things. And, of course, right there in the middle, the big one, Be Vocal for Shop Local, and that's one of the things that we really pride ourselves on, even with this project, even though sometimes I kind of wish I just went and got somebody else, but we're able to keep 90% of the remodel with Nixa businesses, so that's exciting, and buying through Meeks and Nixa Hardware and Innovative Sounds here tonight, utilizing them and so forth. And these are just some of the fun picks that we have. I do want to give one shout out real quick to our Nixa Utility Department. Recently, I had a couple businesses reach out to me. One of them was when the water lines went down at Dockside, and which is our new RDE program, our system. And of course, all the rest of the businesses that were affected by that water line down, they could remain open because they were service-based. But this shut down the restaurant. I made a quick call to find out the details. I just want to commend Doug and Travis for giving me all the information that I needed. They were quick on it. They worked hard. I think Mark Anderson was involved in that project with his construction company, and was able to get that water turned back on. When I talked to Travis about it, I said, well, if we hadn't purchased that water system, what do you think the estimated time would have been for RD&E to get that project done? And it would have been in the weeks. We would have had that business shut down for weeks, and that just would have been very, well, you can imagine how that would have been. And the second time was we had this contractor who was burying a line for AT&T, and it got into the sewer line over at Eagle Pride Automotive right here in Nixa. And Ashley come in one day. She'd been frustrated. She was getting the runaround from AT&T and just getting nowhere and couldn't get any answers, and even called to the city and just was not communicating maybe effectively with the right person. Again, I called the utility department. I called Travis up, got him on the phone. Within 2 days, she had a check for $3,300 to fix it. So I just want to give a shout out to our utility department for the quick turnaround and helping our small businesses. So, guys, that's my presentation tonight, unless you have any questions.
Any questions from Mr. Russell?
If not, I'll see you Friday night. And tomorrow's a Nixa Chamber Luncheon. I believe we're going to have a presentation about the ballot initiative coming up. And then, of course, we'll see you guys Friday night at Nixies. Sound good?
Sounds
Okay,
good.
very good.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. And we'll move on to our second presentation, Better Block from Scott.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about the Better Block project that we recently had in a one-block section of downtown Springfield. We recently got back the survey results. If you have not seen them, I'll be glad to share those with you. But rather than just talk about the survey results, which I will do, I also wanted to kind of recap how we got to actually creating that project and teaming up with who we did. So in order to do that, I got to take you back to 2021 when myself and the then Planning and Development Director attended the Nixa Downtown Revitalization Committee meetings. We attended a few of those. I believe some council members were there. The thoughts for us going there was to we were considering writing a downtown master plan in-house, which is a very ambitious plan for just 2 individuals. But in order to do that, we needed to gather all the thoughts and ideas and everything that we can think of, or everything that we could get out of the property owners, business owners in that area, so we could have a better idea as to what we needed to include in the downtown master plan. A majority of their concerns centered around deficiencies in parking, streetscape, signage, and sidewalks. These are common themes that you'll hear throughout this presentation. So the goal was to kind of not just throw money at not just creating a parking lot, but we wanted to kind of help people reimagine what could happen in the downtown area. And in order to do this, it reminded me of a project that had just finished up in downtown Springfield. This is the organization that did it, Better Block, SGF. Better Block is a national organization, but they have a local chapter, they are a nonprofit. But they deal with a lot of communities and helping bring in temporary infrastructure or installations to help people kind of reimagine what an area can be. The built urban environment can change. They focus mainly on promoting pedestrian safety, environmental sustainability, local economic vitality, art and culture, and community identity. So these are all ideas and themes that kind of came up with our discussions with the downtown group, or downtown committee. So we kind of wanted to find a better way to help people in the downtown area. So this is the project that kind of caught my attention in Springfield. Again, they were able to shut down an entire block of South Avenue in downtown Springfield for roughly 10 days. They extended sidewalk into parking spaces. They shut it down for traffic, so it was basically just a big pedestrian area. It was a very successful project. They got a lot of great feedback from it. Obviously, this is a very different environment than what our downtown area is. Obviously, they have a nice grid structure for their transportation, so if you're unable to make one turn, you can just go a block and then you can make that turn. So this was a very successful project. I did go downtown and kind of visit this, and in the planning world, this is very exciting stuff, so I apologize if it's not exciting for you all, but for me, I geeked out on it a little bit. So this was the concept. So through that, we reached out to the Better Block committee, which their president is Addison Jones. Yeah, sorry, I almost forgot his last name. But I reached out to him, and we kind of got the ball rolling on what can happen in downtown Springfield. This was the main concept. It was two-way traffic, but we extended the sidewalk out into the on-street parking. We removed the on-street parking on the east side of Main Street, expanded, which would allow us to expand the sidewalk on each side. You'll see the white void in the building there. That is a privately owned property, but it was just being used for a trash dumpster, and I believe somebody was just using it as a personal parking spot as well. The property owner allowed us to use that in our temporary installation to kind of create a little pocket park. And then again, the addition of a crosswalk. So our initial plan was to kind of get this installed after, kind of piggyback off for Sucker Days, because Sucker Days would have that road shut down for approximately 3 days, so we could sneak in there, get this set up, and then reopen it to kind of a new visual, new way to interact with the environment. That did not occur. Delays, road projects, again, MoDOT came in and did their intersection improvements at Main and 14, so that delayed the project a little further. We wanted them to do 2 schemes, so we sent them back to kind of come up with a one-way scheme as well. This is the one-way scheme that they came up with. It was not implemented during their 90-day installation. The 90-day installation ran from September to December, so this was by far their longest project that they ever did. So a lot of the temporary stuff that they used, the wood and whatnot, it didn't quite last the whole 90 days, so we received a lot of complaints about how visually it looked. But this was an ambitious project for the city and for Better Block, so it's a lesson learned. But again, this is the one-way project. Again, going one way allows for us to further expand the sidewalks, which would create a much safer environment for pedestrians. This actually got a net gain of parking stalls versus parallel parking on both sides of the street. But again, this wasn't implemented, but it could be a future temporary installation if we so desired. There was a lot of interest from community and local business owners to kind of experiment with this one, but again, this was not part of the survey and did not make it into the actual installation. So now we'll get into the survey results. Again, this is stuff that planners kind of geek out on, so I apologize. For a survey to go for 90 days and to get 92 responses is actually pretty good. This is the first question, is how frequently do you use downtown Nixa? This is interesting because there is, the majority of this is several days per week. When you look at downtown, you see that we have a restaurant, we have boutiques, we have gift shops, but we also have we have an architect, we have a CPA. You know, those people don't necessarily rely on foot traffic, so having people that attend or visit downtown several days per week is kind of exciting to know, or even weekly is also good. And then this is also interesting, how far did you travel to visit downtown? This is basically saying that 90% of respondents probably live inside Nixa or within close enough to get to downtown Nixa within 15 minutes. I live just outside Nixa city limits, but it takes me probably 5 minutes to drive there. So with the majority of the people saying 5 to 15 minutes, that encompasses all of the city. So that's good that we attract a lot of people, not only from inside the city, but also from roughly 15 minutes away. So that means those businesses downtown are drawing customers from a pretty good area. Another question is kind of which of the temporary improvements would you like to see made permanent? You can see the majority of those responses, or the ones that were favorable, were the wider sidewalks with two-way traffic, and then the crosswalk to the parking lot. In addition, the planting in the trees was also a popular part of the temporary installation. Art and sculptures was also a pretty good, we got a lot of good feedback on that as well. So what kind of growth would you like to see? Again, this is kind of 50-50, and they all kind of contradict themselves a little bit, with inward growth, which is utilizing the vacant buildings that are currently there, versus outward growth, which is extending the retail and commercial space beyond Main Street. So it kind of goes both ways. You can either focus on fixing the downtown area itself or helping expand it. This is, again, 50-50. And then for these questions, there's two additional questions. I tried to gather a majority, or kind of saw the theme of what most of the comments were, and I tried to capture some of those comments that express those themes. So how do you feel about downtown Nixa how do you feel downtown Nixa compares to other local downtowns? We got a lot of good feedback on this one. It has potential, but needs more shops and restaurants. For a town of Nixa's size, it's just great. Very small, but has become a very cute and fun place to be. Love the new effort. I feel like Main Street is really improving. It's improving, so this is all positive feedback. There is other feedback. Lacking in theme, disjointed, visually unappealing, very congested, horrible traffic control. It's very different. Nixa needs more. Too basic and not enough destinations. It's nice that it's growing and new things are moving in, but it gets very congested for those who are driving through before, during, or after work. Not enough variety, and it is small. To keep that theme going, again, I don't mean to dwell on the negative, but it's good to know so that we know not to repeat mistakes. It's ineffective, underwhelming, and ugly. Again, these aren't my words. This is just me capturing what was in the survey results. It has lost the downtown look. Not a fan of what they were doing. The long one there about what downtown is, I'll let you read that one. It's boring. It's too congested. This is all feedback that it's relevant. The other question that we asked is, what other improvements would you like to see in downtown Nixa? Again, these are just capturing the overall, the theme that most of the comments were mentioning. Parking improvements, electric vehicle charging station, less traffic on Main Street, more businesses, please keep traffic two-way, or please keep two-way traffic. I would like to see more pedestrian-safe areas, expand parking, connectivity for walking and biking trails, and better lighting. So with the positive comes the negative. The area is very congested, poor traffic control. The church parking lot is an insane waste of space in what should be some of the premier real estate in town. Getting the parking off of Main Street would open up the feel of the area. Again, it's a great idea. Appropriate enforcement of parking violations. Sorry, Chief. Again, the comments range from negative to positive, and it's good to listen to both sides. When it comes to next steps for this is obviously step one in kind of a three-step plan. Step one was to get the Better Block project out of the way, which then we could lead into the downtown master plan, which we have budgeted for this year. We can feed these results to whoever we get under contract for the downtown master plan. And then from there, hopefully the downtown master plan offers us guidance on a downtown zoning district. So that would be step 3 in the process. For this survey, or for this project, the immediate feedback that we could initially do immediately would be to keep this crosswalk, make it more of a permanent thing with proper signage. Most people really enjoyed the crosswalk because it increased pedestrian safety. That's something that we can do immediately. Another thing was to try to keep the pocket park. Again, this isn't city-owned property, this is privately owned property, but it was kind of a hit during the installation because it became kind of a gathering spot that could be used for many different purposes. In the short term, potential to expand sidewalks on both sides, invest in landscaping and outdoor furniture, which obviously we would have to expand the sidewalks before we can do any of that. They also have incentivized redevelopment. We do have the facade grant program. It obviously doesn't provide a lot of funding for the whole revitalization of a building, but it does help building owners recoup some of the cost for updating the facade. And then conduct a comprehensive parking and traffic study that could be incorporated into the downtown master plan. Excuse me. And then the long term, it says also conduct a comprehensive growth. So that is, again, kind of referring to a downtown master plan, which is currently budgeted for this year. And for that is a quick summary. If you have any questions, I will attempt to answer.
Any questions for Scott? Thank you, Scott.
All right.
All right, we'll close that out. We'll move into our visitor section. Our first visitor to kind of go along with the Better Block is Downtown Revitalization Group, or committee.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. My name is Taylor Guessman, and I'm representing the Nixa Downtown Revitalization Committee, but also someone who frequents downtown, a downtown restaurant owner, and then someone who has the opportunity in my professional career to work with a lot of cities and organizations in destination marketing and travel and tourism. And a common theme there is downtown of a city is also very reflective of the brand of that city. So we would like to acknowledge and thank the city for collaborating with Better Block. We would also like to thank the Nixa Arts Council for their work. It was a great project, and thank you for that great presentation. It did highlight some great feedback we received, both positive and negative, but all of that helps us to move in the direction of collaboration. We wanted to just point out a couple things that we saw that were common themes that, most importantly, as we move from the step 1 that we just achieved to the step 2 of creating that master plan and selection of our partner that would help us execute on that, is the theme of public safety, and then the theme of supporting the business owner, community, and property owners of downtown. From a public safety standpoint, that umbrella included acknowledgement of maybe improved speed limit or acknowledging different speed limits for downtown, traffic flow, lighting, and even potentially there was a specific call out to the allowance of big trucks on downtown. So we wanted to call that out specifically because with the suggestion of a crosswalk, there might need to be additional recognition of what vehicles we're actually allowing in that area. Another specific call out was just more requests to see pedestrian safe areas and walkability. From the point of the business owners, community, and property owner support, there was a request for more need for restaurants and shops. And that can only be done through improvements to zoning and infrastructure, so the businesses are welcome through that. And we believe that even though the survey was kind of 50-50 on whether to improve the current buildings or to build out, specific call-outs and some of the qualitative results of the, one of the results said, several of the downtown buildings have improved their faces, but not all. It's important that all buildings are kept up in good and welcoming condition. So some planning and zoning and zoning the downtown district area so those improvements can be made was very important. This is the opinion of the Nixa Downtown Revitalization Group, but we also tried to make sure that when we were looking at the survey results, we were seeing what those 92 respondents said. So it was not just the response of people who own businesses downtown, but people who are frequenting the area within that 5 to 15-minute drive. And then as a destination marketer, knowing that that's a huge economic development opportunity. If the only people visiting our area are within the 5 to 15-minute drive, then that means we have a huge opportunity for brand expansion. I think that's it. That's all I have to say. You have any questions?
Any questions for Taylor?
I just had one quick one. As far as the downtown committee is concerned, is it more confined to that one block area, or is it expanded like further down 14 or north on Main? What is the like the overall goal or desire?
Thank you. That's a very good question. And some of the direct feedback we had when asking other business owners that aren't just board members or committee members, but business owners downtown, is that there needs to be acknowledgement that it's not just 14 south, but 14 to south, but north and south and east and west. So a clearly defined downtown district would be helpful. That would also help us improve walkability and acknowledge what that walkability would look like.
Further on with that, Mark Anderson, 301 West Street. The district would be going all the way to North Street. So South Street, North Street, and then going further east, almost all the way to to Ridgecrest, and then back west over like around AutoZone area. So expanding the district, so we have a district going north, south, east, and west, making a main street where it is desirable to go down the entire main street. I know that I've spoken to and talked to other investors that are looking towards Main Street as, okay, we have an opportunity here. We should be buying something. We should be doing something with this. And I believe that some of the people have already actually been in here in planning and zoning and such to get them rezoned to be able to put some commercial properties along Main Street. So it's going, it's growing, and that's what we're doing. So to back up to something that was said earlier about being number 3rd in process, the zoning district for downtown needs to be more along the lines of up there with the number one thing. So we need the master plan, yes. It ties right in tune with the zoning district. Because I know for a fact there are multiple investors and developers that want to do something that are hitting major roadblocks of, well, this, and then there's this. Well, we can't do that because the rule book doesn't say we can do that yet. That has to change. And the longer it stays the way it is and the way it has been for years, the more people are going to turn around and walk away. I'm going to go to Ozark, spend my money over there where I can make money quickly compared to stay here where okay, yeah, they're going to work on it. We'll get to it eventually. But changing the master plan to part of the zoning district is a must. So I'm requesting that that is something that really gets looked at very, very quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
I have a question. Is there any kind of a theme that you all are looking at to develop for this whole area?
There's, what would be, fantastic for a theme is acknowledging that we don't have a downtown square and acknowledging where the market opportunity is compared to other downtowns developing around us. For example, Ozark having a very historic district and us having a great balance with a more arts district. Now, that hasn't been, set in stone, but if you see some of the beauty and what's been well received the most from the survey is the joy people received from the mural installations, the crosswalk beautification efforts. And those are the things that got people engaged. It creates that Instagrammability factor, which creates strong engagement. So the theme of like an arts district has been something that we're leaning into.
I'll go with arts, health, and wellness.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Mark. Thanks to the entire committee for all that you do for us. All right, now we'll roll into the rest of the visitor section.
Derek Lee.
My name's Derek Lee, and I own some property that we're going to look at rezoning later in this, tonight. And I just wanted you to know the experience that I've had this last week. 1 week ago, I came up here to rezone my property, and I found out for the first time that the sewer lift station out on the west side of town isn't accepting any more sewer. And I had plans to develop the property until I came to a public hearing and found out that there was no sewer available. And so I called staff and I said, hey, you got to let people know. And there was pushback against that. And I was told that that was hard. And I would encourage you to let people know there's property that is for sale where people want to buy and develop, and you guys will not allow development. And it's really unfair to people that get involved in that. I would also ask, and this is the main reason why I'm coming up here today, is I asked for a timeline, and I was told that it was impossible to give me a timeline for when that sewer lift station was going to be finished. There's also issues right now in Nixa with getting transformers. So if I want to develop, I have an unknown time period. The soonest that I was given was 2 years on a lift station. And then I've also been told that it's 2 years for transformers. And so I asked, well, can those things run concurrently? And I was told that any decisions that I made were at my own risk, that the city of Nixa has no way to know if those things can be concurrently or if the sewer lift station can actually be finished in 2 years, that it's very complicated with getting, there's no right-of-way or easements that have been purchased, and there's no way to know when any of that will be done. And I was told that there's a plan, but the plan doesn't have an actual time frame. And so I just want you to know how my experience with trying to develop in Nixa has gone this last week. I would be willing to develop very quickly if I could get a building permit, but I have no time frame and no ability to get there. And so it's just going to sit. And I don't even have any assurance that I'll get a call back or that people will know. It's been very discouraging that I can't get anywhere. So that's why I'm up here.
Have any information on that for us? Mr. Lyons?
Sure. I did speak with Doug Colvin quite a bit about this today as well and looked into it. And my understanding is that at this point, it is a rezone, so we've not had a pre-con meeting yet because there's been no development presented yet, which is when we start talking about capacity and that kind of thing. We've also had multiple public meetings reference the capacity limits and multiple discussions in the public about the lift station. It is an 18 to 24 month process, and that is, as we've said before, that's if everything goes well. We are working on some easements and right-of-way issues. We've contracted about 20 property owners downstream so far, and about 18 of those 20 have verbally agreed. We're still working on about 2 more. And he is correct. I can't guarantee you a timeline because if one of those property owners, let's say, isn't agreement to the easement, it adds about 200 days to that process. So really, it's dependent on those property owners. So at best, it's an 18 to 24 month process, and we're about 30% of the way through that process. I don't know if that helps you with the timeline, but again, I caution on giving that specific because it's really upon the property owners and the easements. And again, if we can't get those, that adds about 200 days to each one of those easements that if they're not verbally agreed or contractually agreed to those easements. So it is a complicated thing, and I'll be honest, yes, I wish this infrastructure was in place 10 years ago. And we're doing our best to plan for the future moving forward. So we are moving that direction as quickly as we can.
And from the council side, we are committed to, we have committed to the investment to build that lift station as soon as we get the plans and the property purchased. So it's not an issue of money or investing in it. It's just the timeline of getting it. As far as the transformers, I think that is a nationwide issue. We work with Liberty, we work with all the other major power companies, and they all tell us the same thing. They don't have any for us to buy from them or to get from anywhere else, so.
I would encourage you to contact the properties that are for sale right now and let them know. None of this notification lets anybody who's buying property know.
Sure.
And it doesn't take long, doesn't take a whole lot of staff to just let people who are buying property know that all these issues are real here in Nixa and that there's no time frame. It could be another 200 days and then you buy your transformer after that. I mean, that's 4 years. And when I said that to...
Well, they're definitely running in parallel. I mean, we have transformers ordered. They just don't exist anywhere to purchase. So we have... I don't know how many, but I don't think anybody, Brian, do you know how many transformers we have on order?
On a single phase pad mount for the subdivisions, we ordered probably roughly close to 75 last year, just predicting, hopefully we know, or we predicted what may come in this year, but yeah, we don't know when they'll be in. The lead times are 1.5 years to 2 years out. The issue we have with on North Main with the apartments, we ordered them, they gave us a year, 1.5 years. A year later, they came back and moved it back 8 more months. So they're not going to be in until the end of this summer. So we're doing our best to get them ordered. We guess what's going to be out there, but
I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. I get it. I get everything that you're saying. But my specific request to your director of public work was when can I order my lift? When can I order my transformer? Because if both of these things are taking several years, and I was told there's no date that we know when the lift station's going to be done. So when do you order that? When do you start your 2-year transformer time frame inside the 2 to 3 year lift station? And I could get no answer to that, other than everything is at my own risk. I understood that part completely, but I think it would be helpful to me and other people who want to develop, where we could order our transformer sometime inside that so that they don't have to run, that they can run consecutively instead of concurrently, or concurrently.
Definitely.
That's
That's definitely a good point. I think I'll also discuss with staff, sending out a letter to any undeveloped property. I think all we can really probably do is undeveloped property that's currently in the city. So if you're annexing something that's outside the city, in your case, you're changing a zoning, so that would be property that's undeveloped, that's already in the city. So, we can send a notification to each one of those people about the timeline that we expect. So, thank you for that. Thank you for that request. I think we can get that done, definitely.
Real quick, I got one. Coming from the utility world, I mean, you can't order something until you have your plans to know what size of load, what kind of voltage. So if you're a commercial building that needs 3-phase power, you're literally going to have all your stuff ready before they could ever order anything anyways.
So do you know how much that costs?
To order a transformer?
To get everything ready to do that?
I
So
do.
that's my whole issue. So when do I start that? So do I spend 50 grand coming up with plans and getting all those things ready and then just sit on it for a year?
And unfortunately, that is the hard decision. 2 years ago, you wouldn't have this issue with the transformers. That's one topic. The sewer lift station, that's another whole different animal. This is unfortunately unforeseen times. These transformers are very expensive also. So the city of Nixa cannot afford to buy every size, every type, every voltage and just have set on hand. So unfortunately, you have to have some kind of plans for them to even order it. So unfortunately, yes, you have to spend the $50,000 in plans if that's what it's going to cost you before Nixa Utilities knows what to order.
I mean, just think about that. So you're going to spend that years in advance, not knowing when. And I appreciate it could hold it up 200 days, but when I spoke with Mr. Colvin, he said it could be even longer than that.
Yeah.
It depends on how good the lawyer is for the person who doesn't want the easement.
Right.
So when do I start that?
Yeah, and that's the hard
And like I
question.
said, I was told it was entirely at my risk, so I can spend all that money now and hope for the best.
Right. No.
Because there's no guarantee it's going to be on me. It's not going to be any of you guys.
Yeah. No, I get where you're coming from, and it's a hard decision to make. But once again, on the utility side of things, their hands are tied too. Once again, before the shortage, before all that stuff, this would not be an issue, but this is a national problem. It's not just City of Nixa. It's every co-op, every utility in the state, in the country, have these same issues. So I'm just speaking on behalf of the utility companies. It's not, hear me say, it's not just City of Nixa. It's all the electrical companies are having the same issue. So.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Ron Sanders.
Good evening. I'm Ron Sanders. I live at 976 Glen Oaks Drive. I want to talk about replacements tonight. 2 weeks ago, whenever we had this meeting, I saw a lot of people leave out of here kind of dejected. They hit a wall of reality, and I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that wall of reality. I've had the privilege of traveling to many different cities over time, living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, going back home every couple years, watching cities evolve as I come and go, as I live there for a year and then disappear for several and then come back. And I see the growing pains here, and I just want to kind of share my observations from what you would say like a 30,000 foot viewpoint. Cities evolve. What people built 40 or 50 years ago thinking that their houses would be there on Main Street forever are going to get tore down. The streets will get widened. They'll be replaced with 2-story, 3-story office buildings, or parking lots for an office building next door. Or if they're decent structures, they might get turned into small offices for dentists or accountants or something like that for several years until they're sold off for more money and, tore down and built again. And with a lot of these communities, there's always a resistance to change. And I see great resistance here in our community. It should happen naturally. I think that a lot of people come in, they want to use their money, they want to use their influence to try to force issues sometimes. But there is a natural order to this evolution of a city, turning from small town to small city to big city. And it involves 20, 50, 100 years at a time, where buildings will fall in disrepair because one certain part of the city will become disfavored. People just won't go there anymore because it's not interesting. And something else will pop up over here, and everybody will start going over there for 5 or 10 years. And this part falls down to the point where now I can afford it. I can pick up this property for pretty cheap, and I can build something new and interesting that'll take all the people from over there and bring them back over here. And that's what the city's going through. So I see downtown eventually, something's going to happen, one side of the road or the other, or you're going to end up closing it and having a pedestrian downtown. On the north side of 14, eventually a lot of those houses are going to be replaced by buildings. Unless something happens somewhere else in the city and we start building somewhere else for professional services and stuff. Maybe a second downtown that develops. But this is going to happen over time. If you force it, though, you will drive a lot of your good citizens that have been here forever, those names that have been for 5 or 6 generations, they'll leave. And if you all are paying attention, some of them are. Some of them have already sold their houses. Some of them were prepared to sell their houses from what happened 2 weeks ago, and they're moving on. Some of them aren't getting rich, by developing the land. They're just selling it and moving somewhere else, taking themselves somewhere else. And something to be said about money. We have a very rich population here. We have a very wealthy population. That means that they can leave just as fast as they can choose to stay. So understand that evolution with the 5 and 10 year plan that y'all have. Get some good people that have a 30-foot vision, 30,000-foot vision of how things evolve, and find some help on how things should evolve, and then get them to help you guide it. Because I see a lot of people are getting their feet stomped on. A lot of people are hitting that wall of reality, and it's being forced. Somebody's throwing them into that wall of reality because they want something else. But the evolution is going to happen whether people like it or not. I don't know if it's ever been said, but yeah, buildings are going to come down. New buildings are going to be put up. These streets that are nice and tight are going to expand. And people are going to move out and new people are going to move in. And eventually, the replacement will happen. I just hope that it's not a complete replacement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. All right, we will close the visitor section. We will move on to our ordinances.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2023-06, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa, amending Chapter 22, Article 4, Division 1, Section 22-284, to modify provisions related to vegetation management of the city's electric distribution.
Mayor, council, good evening. Unfortunately, Doug and Travis are gone, so you have to deal with me tonight. What you have in front of you is a first reading of an ordinance modifying our city code of vegetation management. Basically, we haven't done this in a while. It's basically trying to upgrade it to what national standards are now. Staff intends to bring this back to the next council meeting for a second reading with our recommendation of adopting it. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them.
Any questions for Brian?
Can you just read the whole thing to us, please? I'm just kidding.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And we'll open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to electric distribution vegetation management.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Russell. And we will close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussion? All right, move on to the next one.
First reading Council Bill number 2023-07, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa, amending sections 101-102, 117-101, and 117-99 of the Nixa City Code to accommodate the state's approval of adult use marijuana.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. There we go. I'm before you this evening to present on Council Bill 2023-07, which is kind of the first in a duology of bills that you'll see tonight related to the adoption of Amendment 3 this past November, which related to the authorization of adult use marijuana in the state of Missouri. So just some background on Constitutional Amendment 3. This was approved by the voters of the state of Missouri on April 8th, 2022. And as previously mentioned, the amendment legalizes the use of marijuana by those 21 years of age or older. That's the so-called adult use. And legal sales were authorized under the amendment to occur beginning after February 6, 2023. That was the earliest that the Department of Health and Senior Services, which is the agency charged with implementing this, could issue licenses for people to sell comprehensive marijuana, which is a term you'll hear. So with this adoption of Amendment 3, it's created an issue with the city's zoning ordinance, the land use regulations, which is what we're going to be talking about with this bill. In that, it has established new categories of potential land uses, which were not previously authorized and now are authorized under the constitutional scheme. So previously, we had the medical marijuana amendment, and some new land uses were established when that was adopted. And the same thing is happening here, where there's now a new legal, in the state of Missouri, commercial activity or manufacturing activity that could occur, and our current zoning regulations have no language in them to address these. So that's what this bill is going to do, is add that language already in the amendment to our local regulations, so we have a way to address them locally. And so the bill really does changes three areas of the code, the city zoning ordinance. And we have some definition changes that we're going to discuss, which will occur in section 101-2, which is the definition section for the zoning ordinance. Then we have some regulatory changes that we're going to discuss in section 117-101. And then finally, really briefly, some zoning district changes, which are going to occur in 117-99. So we'll just go through those pretty quickly. So first, we have the definition changes. So as I've said, Amendment 3 has added some new classifications of marijuana-based land uses. Some of these are listed above. You have comprehensive marijuana cultivation facility, and that's really the term that they're using to differentiate between medical is comprehensive, where you can do both. So there's some new definitions for these land uses. And also Amendment 3 modified some of the existing definitions related to medical marijuana terms. And there are some changes in this bill to update our language to codify what's been changed there too. So really all we're doing in this section is taking the definitions that exist under Amendment 3 and placing them in our code. Then we get to the regulatory changes. So this is going to modify section 117-101, which is the city's current use regulation for medical marijuana. So when medical marijuana was adopted, the city passed an ordinance implementing section 117-101 to address the medical marijuana land uses. The changes we're making in this bill would broaden that scope to apply not only to medical, but to medical and comprehensive.
And the major substantive change that we're making there, other than just opening up to marijuana use instead of just medical marijuana use, is we're modifying the separation requirement. Under Amendment 3, the maximum that you can have between so-called marijuana uses and schools, daycares, and churches is 1,000 feet. That's the maximum allowed under Amendment 3. That's what's recommended in the bill before you this evening. And then we have also adopted Amendment 3's method of measuring, which is this lawfully travel by foot method, which the city's ordinance already had. We're just updating it to be consistent with the changes made by Amendment 3. And then finally, and kind of the easiest change made, is we're updating the city's table of approved land uses. This is a section of the code that tells you what you can do in certain zoning districts to place these new classifications in the actual city's zoning districts. So the drafting intent with this section was to just place the new comprehensive uses with their equivalent medical uses. So the code already has medical uses in certain districts, and all we've done is taken the equivalent comprehensive use and placed it with that medical use. That's kind of the short summary of the bill. Really what the intent is just to take the provisions of Amendment 3 and place them in our code so that we have some ways to address them locally with the adoption of Amendment 3. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you might have about the amendment or the proposed changes in the bill.
Any questions?
I have a question, Nick.
Yeah.
Let's say you've got somebody who wants to put one of these in, and you've already got a daycare and church within 1,000 feet of that. They can't put it in there, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So let's say you have a dispensary there and someone wants to put in one of these. Do they get denied a permit to put one in because they're that close to the
Could you say
dispensary?
that again?
If a dispensary is there and someone wants to put in like a daycare.
Oh,
within
no,
1,000
it wouldn't. You can't knock them out once they're in. The separation.
But the daycare would not
is-
be allowed to go in then, right?
No, they could go there if they wanted to. The way it's written, it's to protect the school, daycare, or church, and if a school, daycare, or church wants to voluntarily locate within 1,000 feet of a existing
Okay.
marijuana use, then that's kind of up to them to decide.
But this only applies to like if you're doing a dispensary, not for a personal use of marijuana growth?
No, this is just, so this, what this bill is trying to do is just modify the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
It is on the list to work on so some of the provisions of the amendment provide some ways in which the state or a local government could regulate local use, make that an ordinance violation, so like smoking in public, that could be an ordinance violation.
Okay.
At some point, we will have to modify our controlled substances ordinance to kind of grapple with this question, but that's not really in my view, the high priority right now. Right now, the high priority is the land use regulations, because the sales were authorized, the earliest they could start would be February 6th. But this has nothing to do with personal use, just the zoning aspect.
Okay. Thank you.
Is the 1,000 feet, is that less than because we went through a whole exercise the last time
Yes.
about all these different distances between daycares and churches were different and
Yes.
schools were different.
So-
So is this is the 1,000 less than all of those? And so that's what
No,
we have
I
to
don't
do with?
recall one of them was 1,000, but I have a couple points on that, and that's council's prerogative. We can amend it to be however council wants it, but 1,000 feet across the board is consistent in terms of enforcement. Also, from what I've been told about the methodology of arriving at whose separation was different, it wasn't really that robust of methodology. I think we just reached out to a few people and asked, what would you prefer? And they either answered us or didn't, and we based it on that. So the discussions internally were to just set it at 1,000, since that's consistent across all of the protected classes there, the schools, daycare, or churches. Also, there's a concern from a public policy standpoint that we're not sure how many of these are going to want to come in. So having the maximum separation ensures that we have some control over how many of these can come in and where they can come in. Whereas if we had a lower differential or separation, it could incentivize more to come in. So And that's something that can be changed in the future. If it turns out it's not a huge, public concern, you could lower the separation going forward.
Can Travis provide us a map of what this would, I think he did originally, of what this would exclude?
This won't
Because we didn't
exclude
want to,
any
we didn't want to
existing-
overly, before, I think, well, the way the prior amendment was, you couldn't overly exclude them. You had to allow some areas where they could come in.
Right.
So I
Well,
don't think-
but-
we don't want to violate that again by having the 1,000 feet where it is just blocking out, because the whole town is schools and churches and daycares.
Yeah, you can't go
So
1,000 feet without.
we don't want to overly exclude it, and we want to,
So
the reasons you gave were good, and we just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's fair. The one thing I'll say about that, and again, it's council's prerogative on if we want to go for a lower separation, but the amendment has also added this lawfully traveled by foot requirement. So you don't just take the boundaries of the parcel and blast out a 1,000-foot boundary around it. There's a sort of complicated, and that's in that section of the amendment, section 3, which is just taking the provisions of Amendment 3 and adding it to our code, about how you have to travel and from what point of ingress and egress you have to start from and then get to the boundaries of the school, daycare, or church. So it's not going to be these 1,000-foot, bubbles that go around all the parcels. It's going to be areas you can lawfully travel by foot.
And Nick did a very good job explaining that. But that'd be my concern about how to make that map, because the way
Sure,
this
yeah,
is
no, I
measured
think
is totally
it'd be
different.
difficult, yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to go down a sidewalk, cross the road, back up a sidewalk potentially to get to the church.
Right,
So-
and then determine if you can even, where you can cross at that point. So there's a question about if you could jaywalk. That's not lawfully traveling by foot, so you wouldn't go across to measure. It has to be where you can legally exist and walk.
So most places in Nixa, you could have a school across the street from the dispensary because there's no
Potentially.
crosswalks.
And I'll give you the
Would have to
example of currently
walk half a
where-
mile to get to a crosswalk.
That's right. Where the
Potentially.
current dispensary is, there's a church across the highway from that, within 1,000 feet. But if you actually go down the highway, across the highway and back up, they're okay. So,
Okay.
It's, yeah.
Okay.
But again, it's whatever council's prerogative on that. It doesn't, it's just a quick edit.
See for the future, if it becomes an issue, then we'll.
Yeah, the intent was to
Yeah.
have as much protections as possible and then claw those back if we needed to, based off of what happens in the future, facts on the ground.
So are we more or less required to do this? I mean, is this something we need
You
to?
could, so there is a provision under the amendment to prohibit these, but it requires a vote of the people. And I think you need a supermajority of the public to support it. So if that's something council wanted to pursue, we could do that. But in the meantime, because we haven't had that public initiative, we have to get something on the books to account for it. There is a constitutional issue with the way that the amendment says you can ban it. And I'm not comfortable with just not amending the zoning ordinance before that discussion is had, because there could be some exposure there.
And we have an existing business currently that could take advantage of this, that they're not able to because of our zoning currently.
That is, they have reached out, and we've told them that it's not permitted under the zoning ordinance until there's action from council. So that is an option that could be discussed by council, but there's sort of a different avenue that you have to attack that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll open up the public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item. And we will close the public hearing and move on to the next item. Any other questions or discussion? No, move on to the next item.
First reading Council Bill number 2023-08, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the 2023 annual budget to appropriate funds for an inclusive playground at Macaulay Park.
Good evening. So as you may recall, in our 2022 budget, we allotted funds for the Macaulay Park Playground renovation. That project has begun, but in that process, we had really believed and worked towards being done and completed by the end of 2022. The installation crew was late or slow in arriving on project, and then it has taken them much more time in construction, delaying that completion. Right now, we're somewhere in the month of March for a completion on that. But in that process, the funds, remaining funds to pay for the project were left in 2022, as we did not anticipate needing to carry them over to 2023. And that's why this budget amendment is before you tonight. It moves the $530,189 remaining as a part of that project into 2023. You may recall that those project funds were our park savings funds. And so it wasn't necessarily the general fund. Those were the savings we have done over the last several years that we have earmarked and set back for future park development. And so those are the funds that we'll be moving forward tonight, or, well, technically next council meeting. But this is that first read. I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of that and see if you had any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Matt.
Excellent. Thank you.
And we will open up the public hearing on this item. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Nope. Move on to the next one.
Council Bill number 2023-09, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Hall Ansley PC for professional legal services and amending the 2023 annual budget to appropriate funds for said contract.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Me again, but this isn't the second part of the duology that I promised. This is a contract authorization ordinance related to a federal lawsuit that's been filed against the city. It's styled as Galewood West Development Incorporated versus the City of Nixa, Missouri. Due to the nature of the litigation, staff is recommending that the city engage with outside counsel so that we can have some support in the defense of the city. In consultation with Mr. Lyles, we've reached out to Mr. Timothy Ricker with Hall Ansley PC, who some of you may know. That firm previously provided professional legal services to the city before I came on board as in-house city attorney. If approved, this bill would authorize the city administrator to execute a contract with that firm for these services. And staff reached out to Mr. Ricker primarily because he has experience with municipal law with his prior duties with the City of Nixa, and has quite a lot of experience with federal litigation practice. I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have about this, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions? Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, sir.
And we will open up the public hearing. And close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussion? All right, one more. I think.
Council Bill number 2023-10, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa rezoning the real property generally located at the 1400 block of West Mount Vernon Street from General Commercial GC District to a high-density multifamily residential R3 district.
Mayor, council, good evening. Very shortly, there it is. I'll be doing this death by PowerPoint again. I feel like I have been not providing you with enough visual aids, so I decided that this is the presentation that I give our planning and zoning commissioners, so it has a lot of visual aids for you. That way you can understand, or better understand, how staff comes up with their recommendation. So this is a rezone of property that is in the 1400 block of West Mount Vernon. It is lot 12 of the Auburn Heights subdivision. It is currently zoned general commercial. The requested zoning is for high density multifamily. This is an overview of the zoning in the area. To the south, you'll see there is homes on single-family zone property. To the east is the Nixa SCORE, or Nixa Public Schools SCORE building, which is on general commercial property. To the north is West Highway 14, or excuse me, to the north. To the west, I may have said that right, I don't remember, but to the west is a legal non-conforming single-family home on general commercial property. This is the plat for the lot in question. You can see that it is platted. It was platted as part of the Auburn Heights subdivision. You'll notice the stack of easements on the east side of the property. Those are all utility easements. They are not all the City of Nixa, so there are other entities in place that will have restrictions for those easements. On the west side of the property, you will notice a 40-foot access easement, which extends onto the neighboring property that is MoDOT approved. That will serve as the access point for this property as well as the property to the west when it develops. Another thing of note is the drainage easement. This property contains the stormwater detention for the single-family portion of this subdivision as well as this lot, and it was overdeveloped so it can handle the stormwater runoff from this property, whether it goes general commercial or for multifamily. So again, the property is 1.87 acres. It was annexed in December of 2018 as part of a 21-acre parent parcel, and it was all zoned at general commercial at that time. In 2020, the Auburn Heights preliminary plat split the 21 acres into 14 lots and rezoned the portion of the subject property to R1, which is the current zoning arrangement for the area. The subject property, as mentioned, has the detention basin for the subdivision, or at least for the single family and this lot. The access to Highway 14 is controlled by MoDOT, so any construction plans for that entrance will be approved by MoDOT. The max density for this lot is 27 dwelling units. So staff's recommendation is based off of the comprehensive plan or the adopted plans within it, which in this case, the future land use designation map, this is the one that is currently adopted. Prepare your eyes because it will get pixelated. So to orientate you, this is Nicholas Street right here, and this is Highway 14. This is the Cedar Heights subdivision. This is the property in question right here. You'll see that it is showing as this orange color, which is designated for high-density multifamily. It is very rare that that this future land use map shows specifically a lot in question is supposed to be zoned as the property owner is requesting. So to me, this is strange, but it is also easy for staff's recommendation because it does show that this property in question should be zoned for high-density multifamily purposes. The other elements in question for this property were mentioned earlier with this property is within the Oakmont Lift Station drainage basin, which obviously we are currently in the planning phases or talking to property owners about moving and expanding that lift station to accommodate for future development within that drainage basin. It is also affected by the shortage in transformers. So again, there is going to be some type of delay for development on this property. This agenda item was read to the Planning and Zoning Commission at their meeting earlier this month. Let's see, there were many concerned property owners that approached the commission. They voiced their concerns about the potential increase in crime, increase in noise, the possibility of a 3-story apartment building outside their back door, and the lack of privacy that could occur with development of multifamily at this site. The property owner did, after the agenda item was read, the property owner did speak with many of those concerned citizens, and it sounds like they understood how, at least with it going to multifamily, they will know what is being developed there versus its current zoning or general commercial. There is a laundry list of uses that could go on this property. With all things considered, and with the future land use map showing the subject property being zoned as as high-density multifamily, staff does recommend approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-1 to recommend approval to City Council. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll open up the public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item. Sure. So come up, you gotta come up to the thing, yeah. And say your name.
Charity Fitzgerald. So with working with MoDOT, do you guys anticipate having like a turn lane put in there? It's a very high trafficked area between Nicholas and where those are gonna go in. So like it's already dangerous there at that intersection. So with all the traffic that goes to Clever on that area, do you anticipate like having a turn lane being put in there, do you know?
Honestly, I do not know. That would be MoDOT's discretion as it is a MoDOT route.
Okay.
Any construction plans that come in go to them, and if they have recommendations for additional improvements, that would come from MoDOT at that time.
Okay, just asking. I live at that intersection, so just really curious on like how that's gonna work.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Could I get your name one more time?
Charity Fitzgerald.
Charity.
And we'll leave open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussion? All right, we'll move. All right, before we move on to the resolutions, we will take a 5-minute recess and we will finish up from there. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order and move on to our resolutions.
Resolution number 2023-02, a resolution of the city. My brain's just not working. A resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a sponsorship agreement with Land of Frost.
Good evening. This is our annual, and has been our annual, Land of Frost sponsorship agreement. We've done this for, wow, I've even lost track of the number of years, the last 10 or 12 years. Land of Frost is a great partnership, sponsors a number of youth sports teams within the Parks organization, with a little bit of actual free money for free sports clinics and things as well. And so they've been a great partner to have over the years. This agreement would just allow the city administrator to sign that agreement for another year of great sponsorship with Land of Frost. If you guys have any questions for me.
Any questions? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
And we'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any questions or discussion? Is that the motion to approve?
I'll make
So
the
made.
motion.
I'll second that.
Graham? Mr. Giddens? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution number 2023-03, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with the Missouri State University for certain stormwater monitoring services.
Council, Mayor, good evening. As a part of the City of Nixa's municipal separate stormwater system permit, the city is required to conduct stormwater samplings and monitoring of those samples. For the past 15 years, the Ozarks Environmental and Water Resource Institute has conducted those samples for the City of Nixa. There are currently 9 sites identified by the Department of Natural Resources that require this monitoring. Currently, this Christian County is responsible for 6 of those sites, and Nixa the remaining 3. City staff has worked with Ozark Environmental and Water Resource Institute since 2013. It is our opinion, since no bids have been received for this contract since that time, that they are a sole source provider. They currently have permanently installed equipment to monitor these outlets. With that said, it is staff's recommendation that we once again award this contract to them.
Any questions? Thank you very much. I'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any other questions or discussion? Motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Well, I do like the new sequential order instead of the weird monthly numbers as well. Makes my OCD much happier. Thank you.
Resolution number 2023-04, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa accepting the bid of Art Construction Group LLC for certain improvements to the restroom facilities located at city offices at 1010 Eagle Crush Street and authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract for the same.
Mayor and Council, in August of 2019, a transition plan was developed for the City of Nixa to show.
Jeff, can you pull the mic down and talk to the mic? Yeah, thanks.
Sorry,
That's
that better?
Yep, that's better.
Okay, in 2019, the city received a final draft of our ADA transition plan. This transition plan was put into place to show deficiencies not only in our city rights of way, but our facilities as well. Since that time, staff has budgeted monies for some of these deficiencies, and in 2023, the amount of $150,000 has been set aside for a CIP project for 1010 Eagle Crest, our water quality facility, to do these upgrades and to bring those facilities up to ADA standards. There were 2 bids received, with Art Construction Group LLC as the low bidder at $118,084.89. This amount is under budget.
and it is our recommendation to award this contract to them.
Any questions for Jeff? Thank you very much. And we will open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any other discussion or questions? Motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
Did you get that?
What's that?
Seth, yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, move on to the next one.
Resolution number 2023-05, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Ozark Coca-Cola Bottling Company for single bottle beverages and related services.
Good evening. As Becca just read, 2023 is a year for rebidding our bottling services. So Coca-Cola has been our bottler for concession items and things like that for the last several years. We've had a couple of renewals that we have done. We did put that back out for bid this year. Ozark Coca-Cola Bottling was the only respondent to that bid. And so this would put us into contract with them to provide all of our concession items as far as drink stuff. They also provide the necessary refrigerators and things for us to use within the concession stands. They maintain those for us, so if we have any problems, they come out and fix those at no cost to us. This also includes vending within the facility, and I believe they have a vending machine at both here at City Hall and Public Works. And so this kind of lumps it all into one big contract for us.
Any questions? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
And we will open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
Darlene's got it.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Resolution number 2023-06, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to apply for and accept grant funding provided by the Missouri Department of Transportation for certain traffic safety programs.
Mayor, Council, on an annual basis, we apply with MoDOT for specific grant funding. It is non-matching for DWI and hazardous moving violations. These grants are our primary funding source for our DWI and hazardous moving enforcement efforts through overtime. And we've had some tremendous success with that in light of actually passing the double overtime policy as well. So that allows to compensate at double overtime, and it's really made quite a bit of a difference in participation in those grants. This year, we're seeking $8,350 for hazardous moving enforcement and $8,500 for DWI enforcement. As well as those two primary grant opportunities, we have a variety of non-matching mini grants, which could include the youth seatbelt enforcement, DWI, youth DWI enforcement, click it or ticket, the July 4th DWI enforcement, holiday enforcement, youth alcohol enforcement, and drive sober, get pulled over enforcement. And those are all mini grants that are given throughout the year as well. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Chief. And we'll open up the public hearing on this item. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
Sean.
Quick win.
Jared? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution number 2023-07, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Right Tree Services Incorporated for tree trimming services.
Mayor, Council, I'm back again. We're talking about trees again, except this time our tree trimmer. We went out for bid this year. We got, I think, 5 total. We did not go with the lowest bid this time. The lowest bid, we've had some issues with them in the past about some customer service. And the second lowest bid, it's kind of confusing. It didn't look like they was lowest, but they didn't bid on all the tabs. So came out like they was the lowest. So anyway, we recommend Right Tree Service, a reputable company. I know Ozark Electric used to have them. I don't know if they still are or not, but I know CU works with them, White River. Empire has them. They're a really good company. We recommend that, staff recommends, to approval of this resolution. Do you have any question for us, for me anyway?
Any questions for Brian? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
Brian, I have one question.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I should have asked earlier,
Oh,
but
no
you're
problem.
really fast.
I'm trying to get roll through.
So can we, so if they don't pan out, can we terminate and look for another service provider? So let's just say they don't show up for an extended period of time. Is there an out?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is. Nick can answer more than that. I think we got to give them like a 30-day notice or something like that, and vice versa. They can opt out on ours with a 30-day notice. If that's right, Nick, I don't know.
Yeah, the way the agreement's structured, we pay for them as we need them, so we do have to provide notice to terminate, but in theory, if we had like, if we came to like loggerheads or something and just absolutely didn't want to utilize them, we just wouldn't use them and send them the notice. And there's provisions in our standard contracts too that we have they're not exclusive service contracts, so we could in theory also go out and solicit an additional contract with a different service provider and utilize them.
Your mic went out, but I got it. Thank you.
Did you not hear any of that?
I heard all of it. It was great. It was perfect. Thanks.
And then Mayor and Council also add that we changed the structure on this bid as well. Before, it was an hourly based. We paid per hour per type of equipment or employee. And they actually had the idea of switching that and changing that model and going per job or type of job. And I think that's a much, much better way to utilize our finances and paying for that service.
Cool. That's a good idea. So I did the public hearing already, right? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Any further questions or discussion?
Nope.
Give Seth another second. Okay.
Good. I'll make a
I
motion.
accept a motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor and council, I need to recuse myself from this next.
Thank you, Ms. Graham.
Resolution number 2023-08, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa consenting to the mayor's appointment for Charity Fitzgerald to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Mayor, council, good evening. After the December Planning and Zoning Commission in 2022, Commissioner Sarah Bader resigned her position on the commission. Mayor Brian Still has recommended Charity Fitzgerald to serve out the remainder of her term. That term is set to expire on November 1st, 2025. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Any questions? Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will open up the public hearing. And close the public hearing. Yeah, don't you? Be pretty quick, probably. I've been trying for several years to get someone from the real estate industry to join our planning and zoning. I think that's a great addition, especially a female member of that community, especially with Sarah leaving. I think it's keeps the terrible balance that we currently have, at least, and provides somebody who does have expertise in that area. I think Mr. Giddens had also recommended Charity as well.
Yes, so I work with her often. She's more on the residential side and I'm more on the commercial side, but I know her well, I know her reputation, her knowledge and expertise in all of everything planning and development, I think will be very, very beneficial to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
That sounds like a motion to me, so I'll second it.
A first from Mr. Giddens, second from Mr. Lucas. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, get Ms. Graham for me there.
More marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
one more.
Resolution number 2023-09, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the city's personnel code by modifying certain policies to accommodate recent amendments to the Missouri Constitution related to marijuana and updating the city's smoking policy.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This would be part 2 of the items on the agenda this evening related to the passage of Amendment 3. Here, though, instead of looking outward, we're looking inward with the city as an employer. So just to go over the background a little bit again, November 8th, 2022, the voters of the state of Missouri approved Constitutional Amendment 3. As we previously discussed, this amendment modified the Constitution to allow for the so-called adult use of marijuana. That's for those of 21 years of age or older. The amendment also provided certain employment protections on the use of marijuana, centered around medical marijuana. And so with that in mind, Resolution 2023-09, which is before you this evening, would modify the city's personnel code, otherwise known as the Personnel Handbook, to accommodate some of these changes that have been made in the state's constitution centered around adult use marijuana. So before we get into the actual changes, these were the policy goals that staff identified when we were looking at what we needed to modify to accommodate the adoption of the amendment. So what we're doing is modifying the city's employment policies to allow for the adult use of marijuana by employees within the bounds that we're allowed to have under the amendment, and also to codify the restrictions. So it's kind of a two-step. There's an allowance, but then we're also codifying the restrictions that are expressly stated that we can have as an employer under Amendment 3. And a lot of these restrictions generally relate to where the use of marijuana could jeopardize what they call a bona fide job requirement. A lot of the places we're going to see this as the city as an employer is where we have commercial employees who are required to have commercial driver's licenses. So that's federally regulated, and under the federal controlled substance scheduling, marijuana is still classified as a Class 1 substance, so it's still illegal under federal law. So if it's a federal program that we have to comply with, the amendment gives us the flexibility to still require that employers cannot consume marijuana. So that would be in the CDL arena, also in safety-sensitive situations. Additionally, when federal funding or a federal licensing requirement, which would be the CDL thing, is at issue, we're allowed to still prohibit it. So those are really the drafting goals to look at when we're going over this. So I'm just going to go through each of the policies that we're modifying. The section numbers correspond to the section in the resolution, and then the policy is the policy that's being amended. So first, in Section 1, we're making changes to Policy 6.5, which is the city's drug-free workplace policy. The edits that we're making here are pretty minor. Currently, the language when discussing that we have a drug-free workplace, which means don't consume drugs while on the job, it uses the term illicit drugs. Well, with the adoption of Amendment 3, that marijuana is probably not an illicit drug anymore. So we're just making some clarification changes in there to where it is expressly prohibited to consume or be under the influence of marijuana while on the job or while on duty. Section 2 is really the main substantive piece of the amendment, or of the proposed changes in the resolution. It's adopting a new policy, which will be known as Policy 6.51, the marijuana use policy. And so this policy is being added to address the changes made by Amendment 3. So they're all going to be contained in this policy. And so what we're doing is authorizing adult use, but also adopting the explicit constitutional protections for medical use. So the policy codifies the protections, but also codifies the situations with the city can still prohibit marijuana consumption. And I've listed some of those here. So consuming on the job, we've discussed, reporting for duty under the influence, any consumption that would interfere with a job qualification, that's the CDL or safety piece, and where consumption by an employee would jeopardize any federal funding that we might receive. Importantly, because this is going to be kind of an area that's in flux as we work through how to implement this new amendment. The modifications, the authority in this policy would grant the city administrator, as the chief executive on the administrative side of the charter scheme, authority to designate when these situations occur. So we'll be able to interpret the amendment and rely on the city administrator's authority to determine, well, this position is safety sensitive for X reasons. So we're going to go back to the old way of, marijuana is prohibited, your consumption of marijuana in that position is prohibited. So we have that flexibility to respond to some changing landscapes that could occur. That's really the main one. Section 2 is the big change. Section 3, it's the drug testing policy. It's similar changes that were made in Section 1, where we can't really rely on illicit drug as meaning marijuana anymore. So we're adding marijuana, so it's called out explicitly. And then then we have a cleanup item in Section 4, what I'm calling a housekeeping item. The city has a separately adopted policy known as the Controlled Substance and Alcohol Use and Testing Policy for CDL operators. It's a separately adopted policy that's not really in the personnel code. So all we're doing here is just taking that separately adopted policy, placing it in the personnel code, so it's easy for employees and staff, supervisors and employees to reference. And it's right there in the drug use section of the employment policy. So instead of being the separate thing floating out over here, it's now going to be in what we consider the handbook. And then Section 5, as we were working through grappling with the changes made by Amendment 3, we kind of also took a look at our smoke-free workplace policy, which needs some updating. So we've kind of included that at the end here. And so the changes we're making there are just to have language that addresses electronic nicotine delivery systems. So like vaping, currently we don't have anything addressing that. And also authorizing the city administrator to designate what areas are authorized smoking areas on city premises. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about this. Sort of similar to the zoning item earlier. We're really just trying to take the language that was adopted by Amendment 3 and place it in our regulations so we can have a way to kind of address these issues going forward.
I got a question. You referenced multiple times about safety and CDL on there. We have a lot of city vehicles that don't require a CDL license. What's the plan for that? Does that just fall under the general safety, or how are we going to address those?
Yeah, there is, I believe we've adopted a definition for what we consider safety sensitive, and I think we borrowed that from the state. The state of Missouri has a safety sensitive definition. So what will happen is the city administrator will be able to determine, in his reasonable opinion, what he believes is a safety sensitive position. We'll be able to designate certain positions as safety sensitive, and people will know going forward or in the moment that, this consumption is not allowed.
And you can't be under the influence when you come to work anyway, so you couldn't be under the influence, just like alcohol, you couldn't be under the
Yes,
influence.
sorry, I guess if that was part of your question, I didn't hear
So
that
just
part.
the CDL excludes you from, you can't use it anytime, even off duty.
Right.
Where we're extending it so people could use it off duty, but they can't come in high and drive.
It's prohibited to report to work under the influence or consume while on duty.
Sure.
And then just to clarify a little more on safety-sensitive positions, I will be evaluating all the job descriptions of the different positions in the city and making that determination based off their job duties. And then the plan is to then make sure that on the job description itself, we will notate that it is a safety-sensitive position. That way it's very clear to the employees and future employees that may be hired.
What amount of employees, what proportion do you think are going to fall under not being safety sensitive? If you had to hazard a guess.
Right off the top of my head, all the police officers will be safety sensitive.
I would assume so. I hope
the
so.
number one.
Sorry, Chief.
Then I do have to evaluate the other positions, and I'll do that in conjunction with the department heads. For example, I'll be visiting with Chief about the clerks and what their job duties are, and on down the road of every department. So I think the biggest chunk is going to be the police department, and then, of course, the CDLs will fall into the electric and streets and some of those departments. So a pretty significant portion. Yeah, I don't have that number, but it'd be pretty significant.
But I guess my question is, if I show up and I'm impaired in some capacity, I'm making decisions about children's safety at an event, or, I mean, I just think it's a slippery slope to.
It is, but just to clarify, if you're impaired and reporting for duty, it doesn't matter if you're in safety sensitive or not, that's prohibited. And, that you could be subject to discipline under the policy and under what we're allowed to do under the amendment.
And we have terminated people for alcohol for the same reason in the
It's a little
past.
easier to tell if someone's drunk, though.
That is the
I was going
issue.
to ask that. So you
I mean,
can
I know
smell
people that are
alcohol,
fully
but-
functional.
Yes.
But how are we going to determine if someone shows up impaired if they're high or stoned?
It's a good question. And so part of the reason why it's written to grant this authority to the city administrator is so that when methods in which you can determine that people are currently under the influence for this type of consumption, when those exist, we could implement those. In our discussions, there are some technologies that are coming out, but they're not anywhere near, it's not like a breathalyzer. Marijuana is tricky to determine, and the chief could attest to this in the law enforcement side of things, that it's really tricky to determine if someone's under the influence.
And it's really going to look back to the facts surrounding the circumstances, the observations of the employee, that type of thing. So we'll obviously have to give some of our supervisors, especially, some additional training in that area as we move forward to help look for those clues and identifying factors.
Who would pay for the testing? The city?
I assume so, yes. If we're going to try to take adverse employment action on someone and require them to be tested, we would probably pay for that.
Okay. And is there any insurance implications here? If we allow this, does our potential insurance rates go up?
It's possible, but I'm not sure I wouldn't want to speculate on that. We're not the only entity that are dealing with this. It's been authorized in the state, so to the extent that our insurance rates go up, they're going to go up for everyone in the state.
Sure, but in terms of budgeting for that impact, we don't have any line of sight on
I mean,
that?
we're locked in on, I don't know how our insurance
For at least
contract
a
works,
year.
but my understanding is we have a contract where we pay a premium, and that premium's established. So when we go out and re-evaluate our liability insurance, maybe that would be a factor that they consider, but I wouldn't know.
Do they still drug test on a workplace injury?
Yeah, and that would still be in place.
So here's the thing, if Mr. Lyle says, well, okay, you can smoke weed because you're not in this whole group, and then they get hurt and test positive, what happens?
Well, if
Doesn't necessarily mean they were under the influence at the time.
That's going to be the tricky thing. I don't have a good answer for all this. It's
Well, like in case of a car accident, we have the testing immediately.
the wisdom of the
thereafter,
public
so.
is at play here, and they adopted it. So we kind of have to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I guess, my question, I'll go back to my first question on the one you presented earlier. Is this required that we allow
Could
them?
you repeat that?
Is this
Sorry.
required that we allow this to happen?
So we aren't required to allow adult use generally. We could, as an employer, take the position that no consumption, period. We cannot do that on the medical side of things. The Constitution has, it almost treats them like a protected class, where if they have a medical card and as long as they're not under the influence, we can't take any adverse employment.
Right.
The policy discussion that we had internally, which, this is a council-adopted policy, so, this is our internal discussion. We can have our own discussion now, was it'll be very difficult for us as an employer to hire people if we take an absolutist stance on, you can't no marijuana consumption, period, you can be terminated. With the current employment climate right now, we're not sure how that's going to shake out. We could be we could be on an island, the only employer in Southwest Missouri that decides, we're going to take a hard line on marijuana consumption. We might not be, we don't know, but that could have an impact on hiring. What's the concern?
Okay. I have one more follow-up.
Sure.
On Section 5, are we allowing vaping or are we restricting vaping?
Restricting.
Or restricting it?
To designated areas.
Okay. That was unclear, thanks.
Do you have, is there a certain section that you're looking at?
Just section 5, you'd mentioned vaping and I think some sort of electronic delivery mechanism. I didn't know if you
Oh,
were restricting
okay.
it or permitting it.
No,
Or-
so that section, I wasn't sure if you had a particular section that maybe there was some kind of typographical issue, but no. So our old policy was just smoking is not allowed. Well, there's a whole lot more that goes into that now. So what we're doing is adding language to address electronic nicotine delivery systems and prohibiting that just like we prohibit smoking.
Okay.
Except in certain designated areas.
Does that language, well, I guess we've already excluded the consumption of marijuana, so by saying, because electronic nicotine delivery system wouldn't be the same as an electronic marijuana delivery system.
That would be prohibited.
Although you
That'd be
can deliver
prohibited,
it
just-
electronically,
you can't do it,
right?
huh?
You can vape
Yeah.
marijuana.
Yeah.
THC.
Oh, yeah.
But you're not allowed to
Oil
consume
and-
marijuana, period.
You can't consume marijuana at work anyway. So,
Yeah.
okay. We've
But
already
under,
excluded
but
it.
under this provision, you could, so.
No.
Is that what you're?
No, you cannot.
Not at work, not at work, I beg your pardon, not
Can't
at
do it
work,
at
but just you could.
You do it
I got
at home,
Okay, but
but you
not
can't
at
do it
work.
at work.
I'm with you now, all right, sorry. Sorry.
Maybe we're
Too
testing
much
you out
talking.
for us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Mayor, Council, one thing that I'd like to point out is that you really have to look at the distinction between on-duty and off-duty conduct. And when you're talking about the safety-sensitive positions, in essence, what we're saying is that we're going to regulate your off-duty conduct and prohibit you from partaking in marijuana because of your safety-sensitive position. Now, if you're in a non-safety sensitive position, there is the potential for us to not have any repercussions or anything for off-duty conduct. We always have provisions and policies covering on-duty conduct, and so that's an important distinction. Going back to some questions about how do we handle situations where there are work-related accidents, for example, whether it's a vehicular accident or someone hurts themselves in some other fashion while they're on duty. In the policy, you have to remember that there has to be some kind of indication that we thought that there might be impairment associated with that. And then that simply goes back to your observations as well. In the law enforcement world, we revert back to and rely on things like standardized field sobriety tests and some other types of those tests that we can do to determine potential impairment by things like marijuana. You do get into a tricky situation, however, whenever you have a person who is, let's say, injured on duty, they're non-safety sensitive, and then we ask them we require a drug test, and then that drug test potentially comes up positive for marijuana, for example. And that goes back to the original incident and the observations made at the time whenever the injury was discovered. And I think you're going to have to rely on that to some degree.
I think
but-
until there's like some kind of, equivalent to a breathalyzer for this, that's what we're going to have to do.
Did you put anything in for the call-out portion of it? So we have Public Works people that are on call to come in. Would that be
So,
covered within this?
It could be. My assumption will be that if we're calling them in, they're going to be in a position that's designated as safety sensitive because it's about continual operations of some kind of piece of public infrastructure. And so the city administrator would have authority under this policy to designate those who operate under the call-in or call-out policy as being safety sensitive. So that would be prohibited.
Yeah,
There's no specific language that says if you're under call-in or call-out, you're automatically considered safety sensitive.
I'm going to assume most of those people are probably going to have their CDL as well, which by federal law, they cannot have it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Have you considered any types of time frames between last consumption? Does that help protect us if I can't have a drink before I get here, or?
I mean, we could implement something like that, yeah. Not on medical, though. If the
Not on
medical
get it.
side of things, it's pretty clear what what we're restricted in being able to do. But that's something we could consider.
We could look at that. Quite honestly, it'd be very difficult to enforce because we would just have to go off of their word, whether or not they, when they last consumed. So it'd be very difficult because there's no testing mechanism for amount.
But I can envision coming into work and I haven't had any THC for a couple of hours, but I'm still reasonably impaired and I have an accident. And just in terms of us being held liable for whatever disaster unfolds, it just might be, I think it might put us in a better position.
It could. I mean, but again, it's going to be a proof matter. Just like, frankly, just like the policy we have on alcohol consumption, that you're not allowed to consume alcohol within 4 hours of reporting for duty, unless you see those, I can't think of the word, unless you see those factors present that they're impaired at work, you're not going to know that they consume within 4 hours unless you have some kind of eyewitness who sees that.
But presumably, like pilots, there's some sort of science that goes behind why that decision's made that they can't have an alcoholic drink for some period of time before they report to duty. So it seems to me that it would make sense to consider that.
Well, I think that I'm not an expert on it, but I think that the reason that you can't do those sorts of things with THC right now is because it metabolizes so differently for all kinds of people. That's why there isn't a test right now, because you can make someone take a drug test and know that they had consumed it within X amount of days, but it really depends on how they metabolize it.
I'd be willing to bet there's scientific data that would tell you about the pharmacology of THC metabolism.
One more time,
I'm
sorry.
positive there's evidence, there's scientific research that would show you those data and at least get a good average.
Yeah, well, that's something we can look at if that's something council would want to adopt.
Yeah, that's highly dependent on the test that you select. So for example, there are drug tests that check hair follicle, for example. It could be in there for a month. And right now, it's kind of uncharted territory as far as the reliability of some of these tests that they're developing. Again, it goes back to what Mr. Woodman said about how it's metabolized. There's a lot of science behind how alcohol is metabolized by the body, and it's a pretty fair standard. I mean, we've come to all kind of accept there's a certain amount of alcohol that can be metabolized by the body over a period of time, and there really is nothing like that for marijuana per se. And so as much as we want it to be there, we don't have that ability. That's why we don't have a field test that is widely accepted at this point for marijuana.
Okay. So but we do know the half-life of THC consumption, right? I mean, when it eliminates through the body, we should know at least the half-life and get to...
I think then you come down to the method of consumption, I think there's a lot of different possibilities too.
But to this point that you're making, this is why there's some intent and why this is drafted the way that it is.
And the
so
strength, the strength is unknown as well of what you're getting a lot of the time.
So that these calls can be made by the person under the charter whose job it is to ensure that there's an effective, city administrative staff.
Right.
So these kind of calls can be made by the city administrator depending on how things shake out.
And let me be clear, there's averages, and I think we can take them all to some logical extreme that invalidates the position, but we know how drugs are processed in the body, and there's all sorts of extenuating circumstances, but generally speaking, if we all consume THC, it's going to eliminate at some pace in our bodies. We know that scientifically. So I'm just saying if we can get to an average and feel comfortable, I think it puts us in a better position when somebody has an accident. But anyway, and then I would just add, if I could, if we could understand the numbers of employees we're talking about in terms of, if we're talking 2 or 3 employees, is it worth this academic exercise, or are we talking 50% of the staff? So
What are you referencing
the number of
specifically?
people we think would not fall into safety-sensitive positions within the city staff.
You mean that would, so let me rephrase your question so it's clear. You're saying safety sensitive, but what you're probably saying is anybody who would not be categorically excluded from consuming marijuana under the policy. You want those that would be able to engage in adult use, right? Because there's safety sensitive. Well, there's safety sensitive, and there's those who, might be funded by some kind of federal grant. which we're allowed to prohibit them from consuming marijuana.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'd like to know those, yeah, the
So it just-
totality of the exclusions, I guess, yes. Thank
You
you.
still haven't identified all of them yet, correct? Okay. I mean,
No,
'cause
that is
what-
correct. We still
you
haven't
could-
identified all of them
You
yet.
could say the parks
We're working on that.
employees. I mean, if someone falls over.
They're all on
and-
the wacky tobacco, so, yeah.
So we're not the first state to legalize marijuana. What are some of the other states, city governments handling this situation? What have they done? Did we look into that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've talked with our surrounding communities on what they're doing, and the sense of my conversations with them is they're doing something similar to what we're doing, that we're adopting the protections for medical consumption, but not doing a categorical ban on adult use for the employment concern.
And I can't speak for all the states, but a few of them that I've just kind of picked are very similar to what we're doing as well in some of the other states that's been through this. But I think you're going to find varying policies amongst every agency, but a lot of them are very similar.
Any other questions? Thank you, Nick.
Okay. Is there direction to provide a potential amendment or an additional policy regarding the time window on consumption, similar to how we do alcohol? Like, you can't consume alcohol within 4 hours of reporting for duty. Is that something we want to pursue?
We have something for that, for alcohol already?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, maybe just, yeah, make it the same as that. Why don't we do the public hearing, then we'll have a discussion on the side.
Yeah,
Fair
I'm going
enough.
to say, if it's strong enough, they're 4 hours before they come on, they could still be baked by the time they get here.
Mhm.
So not sure we should actually put a time frame on it. That's wrong.
Because you're also
terminology,
giving them an
sorry.
out, right? You're giving them an out saying that,
Yeah.
I followed the rule that you presented to me that it was 4 hours,
Well,
but I had
But don't
14
come up with
pounds
4
of-
hours, come up with a reasonable time frame that we would think
Yeah,
could.
but if you're,
You're just
we don't
setting
know. I
yourself
guess
up
we
to
don't
be
know that,
lied
do we?
to as well.
even if you put the 4 hours on there, you still come impaired. You're still
Impaired.
Yeah.
And you should
impaired.
know that,
So
yeah.
it's wrong either way.
Yeah.
So we can put the 4 hours on there.
You can put 8 hours in.
You can put 8 hours, whatever. If they're still impaired when they get here, they're still wrong.
Still wrong, yeah.
But, so I'd say if you want to put a time frame, I'd just make it the same as alcohol. One easy thing, everybody knows, everybody understands. But because in the day, if you're impaired when you're here, you're impaired and it's wrong.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll open up the public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item.
I can tell there's a whole bunch of inexperienced people here, right? Right? Am I wrong? Okay. It's pretty much like alcohol, okay? Anybody who's getting into smoking marijuana, they know the strength of what they're buying. Used to have, pretty flamboyant names, but now they actually have numbers on the different types of marijuana that they buy. And it's categorized and it's separated, and it costs more for the higher THC levels of that kind of stuff. In the end, there's a few different ways that I've ever heard about, consuming alcohol. The pilots, back in the day, there was 8 hours between the bottle and the throttle. A lot of people have heard that. During certain parts of my military career, they said 1 drink for every 100 pounds that you have on your body, and that's kind of the metabolic rate. If you're 200 pounds, you can drink 2 shots or 2 glasses of wine in an hour, and you're probably not going to be impaired. But it's a probably thing. If you've never drank before, 2 drinks is going to totally blitz you. If you just came back from a tour in Germany, you could probably drink a 12-pack of Coors Light and never even feel it. So it's the same way with marijuana. You might get some ditch weed where it doesn't do anything to you, but then you might get one of your friends giving you some strong stuff where you take 2 puffs and next thing you know you're sitting there watching something go in circles for an hour. It all depends. But there is a lot of guidance that is already being developed that you guys will be able to dip into and bring to the workplace. And, you know, like the 8 hours between the bottle and the throttle, and, you know, the 2 drinks or 1 drink for every 100 pounds. They're going to have that kind of guidance for people who do take it. But ultimately, you got to kind of remember it's pretty much like alcohol. It does impair you, just like alcohol does. But now we're expecting people to be responsible, just like they should be responsible with alcohol. And if they're not responsible with the alcohol, we have to have regulations, or we have to have some kind of punitive measures that hold them accountable if they're not responsible. And that has to be the ultimate goal. The testing is going to develop. It's going to develop pretty fast. It's already, I mean, there's probably people out there trying to figure out how to do all kinds of things, you know, from the breathalyzer to a pinprick on your finger to a saliva test, or, you know, something like that. It's going to come. But ultimately, people can't show up drunk at work. People can't show up high at work. And if you ever been around people who were high, you'd be able to know whether they were high in about 30 seconds of being around them. Somebody's shaking their head up there, right? Yeah, you'll notice if they're impaired whenever they do come to work. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. And we'll leave open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. So do we want to
I was going to
defer for a week?
So do we need to vote on this tonight, or can we?
No, we can table it till
I
the
didn't know
next
if there was a
meeting.
timeline on this that we needed to have.
I don't think there's.
No,
not
we
a specific
can,
call out.
status quo can be maintained under our current policies. The only thing that can't be maintained is the medical card authorization piece, but we're preempted under the Constitution for that component, so.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to put a time frame on it, because, I mean, if it was higher in THC, like what Ron was talking about, and I take a picture, and I'm one of the people who can use it outside, and I take a picture of myself 4 hours and 15 minutes before coming into work, well, I'm good. Pop some Visine in and ready to go. I think it's fine the way it is. I mean, honestly, what he was saying, things will change and we'll probably learn from it, but I'll be curious to see how, like, what you come up with as far as the classifications and.
Sure, yep, and I'm working through those, so it will take just a little bit of time, but we are getting through those. And then.
But that's just my thought, you guys can.
The only other thing I'd mention on the time frame, the only, again, we can hold this off by all means. We're just looking for direction for our employees, because I can't tell you we've already got questions on how we're gonna, from our employees on how we're gonna handle this now that it's legal. So.
Here's a question. If we go ahead and approve this, we can always amend it later if we want to add time to it, right?
Absolutely.
If we learn something
But this
from it,
gets
yeah.
us going in the right direction. If we say, hey, we want to add a 4-hour, 8-hour, whatever window, we can always come back and do that.
Absolutely. We can put together some, we can do some of the research, as Seth was
But
explaining.
that will allow you guys as staff to handle if you
That's right.
have a situation that comes
Yes.
up.
We can get through the research, I can get those 60 cents of positions figured out, and then come back as a presentation in the future to council, and we can obviously then change any of that policy, yeah, absolutely.
So my thought would go ahead and vote on this, and then if we have a issue where we want to change, bring it back up. I mean, obviously, if you're asking my opinion, I say no one smoke it, but that's not reality in today's world.
I'm good with the way it's written. Need a motion?
So what's your thought on that, Seth? Are you okay with that, and then having them come back?
No,
with
I
the
think
presentation?
there's like a number of questions that are unanswered, and I think we should maybe take the time to think about them a little bit more.
What are they?
Time frame, liability, the numbers of employees, all the ones I articulated.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of entities too that do have that hard line drawn in the sand that says, hey, if you're gonna be an employee here, you're not allowed to do this. And I think we need to kind of look at that some too.
On making that
decision.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
And-
I
and
think
as-
we need to look at that at
Yeah, as
least. I'm
Mr.
not-
Woodman did say, we did talk about that internally. We're just very concerned about the workforce right now. We're having a very difficult time filling our positions currently. That's our only concern, but we absolutely, if that's the direction of council, we can absolutely take that.
Do you think by
stance.
the next meeting you could have an idea of some of Seth's questions?
Sure.
Like the number of, okay.
So
Okay,
I guess
we
on the
wait 2 weeks
employment
and-
front,
or
so are we
anything?
thinking that we're not able to hire people because they can't consume THC? Is it? I'm not following that. Or that if we
For
open
some-
it up.
For
we're-
some positions, yeah.
That is? For some positions.
Yeah. That's definitely true. Okay, so if you, Seth, you'd like to make a motion to table this to the next meeting?
So moved.
I'll second it.
And Mr. Lucas will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, that passes. We will table this until the next meeting. Sean? And we got 5 yeses and 1 no. Yep. Oh,
No.
Jared was the one.
Is-
Jared was the one. You good? Okay. All right, we will move on from that then. That's the last item on our agenda. Anything else from staff? No. Nixies are Friday night, so if you haven't got your request in with Becca to get your tickets, or
You're
we're
out of
all
luck.
tickets, you can't go. If you didn't ask soon enough, you don't get to go. Okay. Anything else from council? No? All right. Ms. Peterson.
I move the city council go into closed session under section 610-021-1 of RSMO so that council may discuss legal actions, causes of action, and confidential and privileged communications with their attorney. I also move that this closed session, records related thereto, and any votes taken by the council during this session shall be closed under section 610-021 of RSMO, and that the city council shall stand adjourned after the closed session.
Need a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham, Matt Ogden,
Yes.
Seth Baylog.
Yes.
Thank you all.